much the same vein, we now move to Operation Ceasefire from the city of Boston. And representing the city are Paul Evans and Tracy Lithcott.
Good morning. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. In the 10 months between June 1990 and April 91, 42 people under the age of 24 were killed with firearms in Boston. In the 15 months between June 96 and September 97, 15 people under the age of 24 were killed with guns. In the past 29 months, no juvenile has been killed with a firearm in Boston. Overall, homicides hit a city record of 152 in 1990. By this date in 1990, the city had experienced 107 murders. As of today, Boston has experienced 34 homicides. Something has changed. We believe that something is a comprehensive strategy spearheaded by Operation Ceasefire. The strategy includes intensive collaborative efforts in the areas of prevention, intervention, and enforcement. Ceasefire is the cutting edge of our intervention and enforcement initiatives. Ceasefire broadens the system of policing to include street workers, clergy, academics, and social workers, in addition to criminal justice stakeholders at all levels and disciplines, from district court judges to probation to the U.S. Attorney. Its central operating feature is a hotspots program we deploy whenever gunfire flares in a neighborhood. Research showed that our homicide crisis of the early 90s, they get a number of messages. 1, your actions are not anonymous. We know what you're doing. 2, we, the criminal justice system, are behaving like a system. If you don't comply, we will ratchet enforcement down to an essentially no tolerance level. In several hotspot situations, gangs have complied. The shooting has stopped, not by landing a division of police on the street, but by the power of a criminal justice response that is unified, smart, and comprehensive. Those who have not complied have been hit hard with a raft of federal indictments. As President Clinton described it, ceasefire is tough when it has to be tough, smart when we have to be smart, and compassionate when you have to be compassionate. We have learned in Boston that you cannot be credible about enforcement if you're not credible on prevention, and vice versa. To amplify these ideas, I'd now like to bring up Tracy Lithcott.
Good morning. Once again, my name is Tracy Lithcott. I'm the Director of Youth Services for the City of Boston. I can remember back in 1990 when our homicide rate had reached its all-time high when I was a street worker. I also can remember between the periods of 1990 to 1994 where I attended over 100 funerals for kids and young adults between the ages of 10, anywhere from 10 years old to 24 years of age. It was not a good feeling at all, but I also remember that we couldn't save all the kids. Some of the kids just did not want the resources that we had to offer. Boston Police Department Commissioner Evans came up with this approach of tough policing, tough prosecution, but also providing resources for the individuals who wanted the resources. And after attending all those funerals, believe me, I definitely believed in this approach. One thing I have to say about law enforcement is they didn't have to involve us in this initiative. But because of the way the communities are changing and this comprehensive approach, we thought it was best to provide resources for people as well. 2 examples, one of the 2 gangs in the area, one in the Dorchester area. The community basically had given up on these individuals. We provided employment, education for these individuals, some economic stability. They did very well. In another neighborhood in Roxbury, where the individuals didn't take the resources that we had to offer, they actually received a tough prosecution and tough policing. But within that Roxbury neighborhood, I actually went out to that street corner in the parks that kids and mothers hadn't been there in years. They felt very comfortable walking the streets again and being a part of the community. Once again, I must say I believe in tough policing and tough prosecution, but also providing resources for the community. For some of the cities that haven't replicated this idea as of yet, please think about doing so. Do not wait until somebody close to you dies until you implement a program like this. It is very effective. One feeling that I can live with right now is for the last 2 years, we haven't had a juvenile homicide. Thank you.
Mayor Hatcher.
I think we all want tough policing. There's no question about that. Where do you draw the line between tough policing and harassment? I'm very interested in the intensive phase of the program. intensive enforcement?
Well, I think to the contrary, our complaints against officers have gone down dramatically, almost 50% in the last 6 years. So what we believe in is upfront with the kids, being very, very clear and explaining to them that, you know, the violence stops. When there's a shooting in the neighborhood, we go in and sit down with the kids and explain the consequences of their continued violent behavior. And, you know, if they continue to do so, then we will do drug enforcement, public drinking arrests, that type of thing. But on the contrary, similar to our drop in crime, we have also seen a drop in complaints against officers. So, you know, I think that goes to the communication and the collaboration.
Max Sherman.
The city of Boston has a very elaborate infrastructure to deal with social services and issues. Not every city has that. This interagency cooperation, it seems to me, is critical to it. Would you elaborate upon, even under favorable circumstances, how you did it, and what if I were from the mayor of a city that did not have that kind of an infrastructure?
Well, again, the secret, I think, to our success, part of it is ceasefire, but it's the whole comprehensive nature, prevention, intervention, enforcement. And I think it's, you know, reducing crime is everybody's job, and I think that's what we've recognized, and we've partnered with nonprofit agencies to get alternatives for young people, to get jobs for young people. The police are out there getting jobs with, you know, private industry for young people, and I think that's, anybody can do that, partnering, and that's what community policing is all about. And it has been you know, replicated in Minneapolis. They've come to our city and have also experienced reductions in crime. But I think what we're not about is just tough enforcement. We're about alternatives and jobs for young people and intervening when high-risk kids get in trouble.
Ellen Henry.
To what extent has the improved economy played a role in the success of your program?
I'm certain it has. One of the things that we have a lot of cities come to our city to look at what's transpired, and they all look for one single program. Even Ceasefire, as good as it is, there's an awful lot of partnering, the improved economy that certainly is having an impact. But you know, for the last 30 or 40 years, our city has experienced about 93 homicides. Last year we had a 30-year record low, and this year we're already 33% under where we were last year.
Barbara Roberts.
I noticed your federal indictments. Could you talk about, is there really a federal partnership involved in the city partnership as well?
Absolutely. I think that's been one of our success, that we have at the table when we do these compliance meetings. We have the federal U.S. attorney, state attorney general, and local DA. The U.S. attorney is very close to our gang officers. They don't do more cases than they may have done 10 years ago, but what they do is the very critical cases. If young people that are involved in gangs don't agree to comply, continue to engage in violence and sell drugs, the U.S. attorney has adopted those cases. And those cases have sent a strong message to other gang members to turn away from violence, and we market those cases. Again, success for us is kids not being killed, and also not being able to make more cases and seeing fewer kids carrying guns.
Jack Rosenthal.
I admire your program. At the same time, I'd like to ask about relative degrees of success. Almost every city in America has experienced substantial decreases in crime over the last several years. The decreases in Boston started a year or two or more before Operation Ceasefire. Could you talk about the relative importance of this program as compared to unknown or other explanations?
Well, I think the importance of this program is we looked at who was doing the killing and who was being killed. We had a small, disproportionate number of kids, probably about maybe 500, 600 in the city. Between 1990 and 1996, we looked at who was being killed. 2/3 of the kids had been arrested at least once. The average victim had been arrested 9.5 times. They were all recidivists, and the system wasn't dealing with them. So this is geared to those kids, the kids that are heavily involved in violence. Now, you know, I don't know if the economic picture is going to help those kids. So those are the kids that we work with We don't do blanket curfews. These are the kids that we'll go out and work with. And I think that's the population we had to work with, and that's where we've been successful.
If I may exercise the prerogative of the chair, just as the permission of my fellow panelists to extend this for one more moment. In our discussions last night, there's a question I'd like to pursue with you, and that is that Bob Herbert, the columnist from the New York Times, has been writing recently about your program in a very flattering way, but has given an enormous amount of credit to the clergy in Boston rather than the police, and it's been hard for us to separate out who deserve. I know that success has many fathers. If you could help us and mothers. It's a wonderful thing by this new day. How politely that was done. It was very good. Could you help us separate out? I think that.
Well, I think it gets back to the whole collaborative effort that's going on in Boston. The clergy are a very powerful role. They've come out of the churches. They're out on street corners. They're working very, very closely with police officers. And in many ways, we speak the same language. We realize in the old days, cops might have been saying, we're going to lock them all up. Now cops are saying, hey, look, we got to provide jobs and alternatives. So that, and the clergy is also saying there are some kids we can't save that we have to lock up for them, and we minister for those kids in prison. So there's a lot of collaborative effort in I think what is critical is that we're working together. Nobody's standing out there pounding their chest and saying, we're solely responsible for the reduction of crime. And I think that's been the success we've had with the clergy, and they've been working very, very closely with us. In fact, we've just, with block grant money, given them a grant to